The 60-day US-Iran diplomatic deadline has expired without agreement as President Donald Trump of the United States threatened military action against Oman while Washington prepared tougher economic measures against Tehran. The June 18th Memorandum of Understanding was intended to create a pathway towards ending the conflict and negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. But talks have stalled, with the two sides still sharply divided over the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has also warned Oman, a key U.S. partner and mediator, not to obstruct Washington's efforts to reopen the waterway. Iran's foreign ministry has signaled that talks with Oman over a formal mechanism to allow ships passage through the Strait of Hormuz continue.
The issue is very complicated. For the first time, you are trying to devise a mechanism and arrangement that would both ensure the sovereignty and sovereign rights of the two coastal states and provide for the safe passage of commercial vessels through these waters. Another point is the number of actors seeking to exert influence in this process, and perhaps more importantly, the efforts by certain ill-intentioned parties to undermine it, who have shown that they never allow peace and security to prevail in the region and essentially prefer our region to remain in a constant state of conflict and turmoil. These three factors have caused this process to take some time. But if you take all of this into consideration, given that the root of this situation goes back to February 28th, we went through 40 very eventful days. The comprehensive defense by Iranians of their national sovereignty and territorial integrity, and then the process that led to June 18th, when the June understanding was supposed to serve as a starting point for reducing tensions. Unfortunately, America broke its commitments there as well, with the process of implementing the Memorandum of Understanding beginning only 20 days after the process had started.
Let's pick up on that story with SABC News US Correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who joins us now from New York. Good evening to you, Sherwin. 60 days didn't feel like an eternity, but it felt like a significant amount of time at the time of this Memorandum of Understanding. But it seems now the Pakistani-mediated Memorandum of Understanding that was supposed to provide this pathway to a longer-term peace is now, for all intents and purposes, dead in the water. Is there still a pathway that we see to negotiations, and what more are you hearing, at least from the U.S. side of things?
Well, the Pakistanis, the Qataris, and even the Omanis would tell you, Talasizwe, that negotiations are the only way that you are going to arrest this standoff between the United States and Iran. But what you and I should be talking about today is what is going to be happening with Iran's enriched uranium. What is going to be happening with the future of their nuclear program? What are they going to be doing about their ballistic weapons production? What are we going to be doing about Iran's influence over proxies like the Houthis in Yemen or Hezbollah in southern Lebanon or Hamas in Gaza, right? And that is what this framework, this Memorandum of Understanding was going to allow for, to get really to the root issues here at the very base of the tree stump, if you will, in terms of why we are in this conflagration between the United States, Iran, and with Israel very much in the mix here. And so what you have President Trump saying on Fox News today is, quote, Iran should put up the white flag and surrender. He also said that there was no time schedule and he's not in a hurry to reach a deal with Iran, although the impetus for that was very clear at the beginning. He talked about a 4 to 6 week conflict. On Oman, he said he was asked about Oman's continued negotiations with Iran in terms of a mechanism to allow ships in and out of the Strait of Hormuz. He says, quote, if Oman gets in the way, we'll bomb the bleep out of them. And it starts with an S. You can fill in the gap. And he also says that it's not a the only thing that they are focused on is not allowing Iran to have a nuclear weapon. This is some of what the president also said in terms of taking over the Strait of Hormuz as a U.S. territory. He was speaking in Long Island, New York on Friday. Watch.
After we finish defeating Iran, which is being very badly defeated, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States. Essentially, that's what it is. We have the blockade. No ships get through unless we want them to. But, and how about Venezuela? Venezuela was a one-day war. And now we work great with them. We've taken in millions and millions of barrels of oil. but we're doing really good. We're doing good in every way. You know, I built the military, and now I used it a little bit more than I wanted to, frankly, but that's okay, because we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Do we agree? Can't let it. So for you to pay a tiny little bit more for your gasoline, just remember, you're doing it so that a very evil country cannot have, a country, really, it's the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world. We don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon.
Angela Sizwe, you asked me if a diplomatic pathway is still open. Certainly from the UN Secretary General's perspective, his spokesperson telling us today that Guterres is urging the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States to resume negotiations towards a peaceful and durable settlement as soon as possible, to avoid military action, as well as to lower the rhetoric that we've been hearing in recent days. But of course, no one's really listening to the Secretary General, are they?
No, not at all, Sherwin. In fact, as you talk about the rhetoric, as if it's possible to ramp it up even more, there's this talk now, this talk of mooted new sanctions that are being planned by the United States Treasury Department. And we're told this is in an effort to further tighten the economic screws on Iran. This is a country that's already heavily sanctioned by various entities and countries, including the US, the EU, and the UK, as well as the United Nations, among others. So is there a sense then that additional sanctions can change the calculus?
In the absence of military action doing so, the United States is relying on the Treasury Department under Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, really to impose economic costs as far as is possible, given the sanctions that already, these punitive measures that already exist on Iran and have done so for many years without necessarily changing the calculus in a way the international community has often sought to achieve. Bessent said in a August 13th interview they would impose new economic measures on Iran, quote, like have never been seen in the history of economic isolation on a country. He said that this is a 1-2 punch. The intensified economic punitive measures, in addition to the U.S. Navy blockade that is still in effect over at the Strait of Hormuz. And understand this as well. In Iran, inflation currently at 88%. That was the reading in July. Some food price categories have increased year on year by 100, if not 200%. The IMF projects Iran's economy will retract by some 5.4% in 2026. And of course, understand that oil exports, right, have been severely disrupted by this ongoing war. And this is a big earner of foreign currency for Iran. The President, Masoud Pezeshkian, also speaking to the economic costs here. Let's watch.
The issue of livelihoods that our brother is talking about, the rise in prices that he is talking about, well, that is natural. Previously, we used to bring goods by ship, but now they have to travel the entire route before reaching us. The cost of the finished product has gone up. Our income has also decreased. We used to sell oil, but now we cannot sell it. They have destroyed a number of factories, and we cannot collect taxes from them in the same way. Not only can we not collect taxes, we also have to give them money to keep them operating. The wheels of the economy have to keep turning.
And of course, the economic costs also up. The US president in that clip earlier talking about Americans paying more for fuel at the gas pump. And of course, one wonders what the political costs will be of that come the November congressional midterm elections.
Yeah, in fact, say a bit more about that, Sherwin, because I picked that up in that clip you played a bit earlier on when he was trying to almost to soften the blow and saying that if it means you have to pay a bit extra for your gasoline, it's a small price to pay, and I'm paraphrasing here, for the project that is on the go, according to him, in Iran. So how does that play out then in domestic politics?
Well, there was an advisor to Bill Clinton, I think, in the mid-1990s that famously said it's about the economy, stupid, and that's what it's going to come down to. If Americans are feeling that inflationary costs are too high, that the promises made when Donald Trump ran for his second term, promising to bring down costs, promising not to go to war, and the antithesis of that is playing out now, Americans are going to vote based on their means of income and the means in which they're able to distribute it. And the economy is always a central peg to an election. And then add to that the emotional toll, the emotional costs. A number of American troops have died here. There are families of these deployed personnel, for example, on the USS Abraham Lincoln, coverage from various military publications in the United States talking about issues around growing mental health concerns, fatigue, failing morale, supply and sanitation problems on board. They are now going to replace that battleship that had this aircraft carrier that is essentially houses about 5,000 troops that has been deployed at sea for over 250 days. They are now going to swap that around, but understand the cost here, the cost to the Treasury in terms of a prolonged war effort here by the United States. Remember, this was supposed to last 4 weeks, 6 weeks at the most. This war has ended many times already based on the words that emanate from officials in the White House. The Strait of Hormuz was supposed to be open within days. And so, the longer this goes and where the narrative keeps shifting, this is having an economic cost, but also a political and emotional human toll on both the families of those deployed and the personnel themselves.
Sherwin, thank you for that update as always. Sherwin Bryce-Pease live for us from New York there with a roundup of key developments around the issues between the United States and Iran, as well as, of course, that deadline that has now come and gone. They had given themselves 60 days to negotiate a substantive agreement for better relations between the two countries. That has come and gone without much progress, as Sherwin was reporting.